Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be doing my April wrap-up part 2. April, right? Yes, it's April. I have no idea what day it is anymore. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in the second half of the month. I will link up in the cards my part 1 wrap-up that I did a couple of weeks ago, where I talked about the books that I read in the first half of the month in case you haven't seen that one already. So yeah, let's jump into the books. So the first book I'm just going to mention very briefly is I read Cersei by Madeline Miller. I'm not going to talk about this one very much here because I did an entire review on this one last week because I love this book so much, and I will just tell you I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. So go ahead and watch that review if you want more information about this book or more of my thoughts on this book. But yeah, I adored it. I am just going to give a blanket recommendation to everyone to pick up this book because I really enjoyed it. Alright, next I read The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is a book I picked up for the Book Riot Read Harder Challenge of read a science fiction book with a female protagonist written by a female author. So yeah, I read this one because everyone here on BookTube adores it, and so I figured it would be a good one for me to pick up since I don't read a lot of science fiction. Again, I've heard this one is really accessible, and it's true. This is just a really fun, delightful story. So if for some reason you haven't heard about this book yet, you are basically following this crew of people on this spaceship called the Wayfarer. And while there is a plot to this story, basically what you're doing is you're following them as they head off to a job. They're tunnelers. They explain in the book what that means. I'm not going to pretend like I fully understand everything that was happening in this book, but there's just a crew of people, and so you get to really see who all of these people are. They're not all humans. There are different species and stuff happening in here as well, so there's that whole aspect to it. But yeah, I just found this to be a really just fun, heartwarming read. The characters in here are all really interesting. I think on Goodreads I rated it a 4 out of 5 stars, but I think in general it's more like a 3.5 for me, and the only reason why I docked it down that half star in my head is because it gets a little bit heavy-handed sometimes with the more moral type stuff. Like some of the ways that the characters are used in here to talk about things like gender and racism and sexuality. Obviously I enjoy books that have those positive messages in them, but it felt a little bit heavy-handed at times in this book. But overall, I really enjoyed this book. It was so much fun. It was a book that I didn't want to put down, and I feel like this is a book that I could recommend to a bunch of different people, even if they're not necessarily science fiction readers themselves. Like me, I'm not really a science fiction reader very much, and so this was a great entry-level book. I'm definitely going to be checking out more books because I know that she wrote not the sequel but the companion novel to this one that's out, and I think she has a third book that's coming out this year, so I definitely plan on picking those up eventually as well. I know that the second one is really different from this one, but I think that I just enjoy these characters enough that I'm willing to read more about them. Alright, the next book that I picked up was Dark Chapter by Winnie M. Lee. This is a fiction mystery book technically, but this story is based on events that occurred to the author. So in the story, you are following Vivian, who is this Taiwanese American young woman. She is now living in London, and she likes to travel usually by herself to go hiking and things like that. So she travels to Belfast to go on this hike and also for work, and while she is on this hike she ends up getting attacked and raped. So you follow the story from both her point of view as well as the young man who attacks her, and it switches back and forth between the two perspectives. So you see what Vivian's life is like and what sort of led up until this point, and you also see her recovering after the fact, and then you also follow again the attacker's point of view and you see his life up until this point and what his life was like moving forward. This book was okay. The things I liked about this book is that this book is very honest and real about the attack itself as well as the effects that the attack has on people. This book is very detailed about how after Vivian's attacked, the steps that she had to take with the police, how she had to tell her story multiple times to multiple different people at the police station, at the hospital, and things like that. The sort of almost degrading process that you have to go through at the hospital to get a rape kit done, to be photographed, have your bruises and whatever photographed, things like that, and how much of a toll that takes on someone who's already a victim, and the difficult things they have to deal with even after the fact while they're looking for the person and things like that. It also talks about how difficult it was for her to just deal with other people and trying to move forward and things like that. But I don't think this book is very well written, and at times it felt a little bit too neatly packaged. Like, I think that this book is a good eye-opener for a lot of people, especially if they don't really know that much about the impacts that being attacked can have on a person. It's one of those things where it's like, I feel bad criticizing it because obviously this is based on true life and her real experiences. But at the same time, something about the way this book was put together just really didn't appeal to me very much. I felt like everything from the attacker's point of view just felt very almost stereotypical at times, and just, yeah, I had a hard time with this one. I never really connected with it. And one of the things I had a problem with, not a problem with, but it was hard to read a lot of times because they're very detailed about the attack, and they go over it multiple times. Like, there's a scene where she's getting attacked and you read very explicitly what's happening, and then there's a scene, I think, when she's talking to either the police officers where, again, it's described explicitly, and then there's another scene where they're in a courtroom, and again, it's talked about explicitly. I kind of understand because obviously she's had to deal with it multiple times and talk about it explicitly multiple times, but as a reader, it was really hard to read. So obviously, major trigger warnings for this book. I definitely don't recommend it to everyone because I don't think it's going to be easy for people to read this topic and to read about it in the way that it's written, but I do think that it's one of those books where I'm glad that it's written because it talks about things so openly and honestly. I don't know, I'm of two minds with this book, and I don't really know exactly where I land with it. So yeah, if this book sounds interesting to you, or it sounds like something that you would want to read, I say, like, you know, maybe get it from the library. Yeah, the way that this book is written was just really off-putting for me in a way that had a strong negative effect on the way that I viewed this overall story. All right, and the final book that I have to talk about in this video is Promise Me Dad by Joe Biden. The subtitle to this is A Year of Hope, Hardship, and Purpose. So if you saw back in December my vlog that I did, I went and I actually saw Joe Biden speak live here in Chicago while he was touring for this book, and with the ticket we also got a copy of the book, obviously. So I actually listened to this one on audiobook. I picked up the audiobook from Audible because Joe Biden narrates it, and I feel like that's always a great way to experience memoirs, and I'm really glad that I did that. I think that if you're a fan of Joe Biden, you're going to like this book, but I think that if you're not a fan of Joe Biden, I don't know if you're necessarily going to like this book. So the premise behind this book is that it follows basically the year from when he finds out that his son has cancer up and through his son passing away and sort of dealing with the grief after the fact. Generally, I don't like memoirs by politicians because in my eyes it always feels like they're selling me on something, whether it be like themselves or the work that they've done or something along those lines. Like, I know in general memoirs are usually written in a relatively positive light, but I feel like especially politicians, it just feels like, okay, I get it, like you think you've been doing good work sometimes. So generally I stay away from them. This one I picked up because Joe Biden's son Beau, who is the topic of this book, passed away maybe like 4 months after my dad passed away, and I remember it very distinctly because son passed away on a Saturday. On Sunday I was on Twitter and people were talking about how sad they felt, obviously, and someone shared a link to a speech Joe Biden gave. It was prior to Beau passing away because Joe Biden's wife and daughter, I want to say, passed away a number of years ago, and so he was giving a speech to the family members of fallen soldiers, and he talks about grief and dealing with grief. And watching that speech very soon after my dad passed away had a very strong positive effect on me and the grieving process. It was like one of the first times where someone talked about grief in a way that felt real to me. I'll link it in the description or up in the cards if I can find a link to it, because yeah, just the way he talks about the grieving process just really helped me through my grieving process. And so ever since then, I've had a slight affection for Joe Biden. And so I wanted to pick up this book because, again, he talks about Beau passing away and he talks about things like grief and grieving and things like that. So overall, I enjoyed this book, especially for those reasons. It, again, just feels very honest and real when it comes to dealing with things like grief. Joe Biden is a very positive person too, though, so this isn't really like a dark side of grief. It's more like finding the hope, finding the joy, finding the motivation to move forward and things like that. But to be honest, my favorite parts of this book are any time that Joe Biden talks about Obama, because I'm all in for that Obama-Biden friendship. Like the way that Joe Biden talks about Barack Obama. It's just so full of love, and it just makes me really happy. So all of those passages, all of those chapters I'm very much into. Also, I'm going to link to down below the video, if I can find it, if it's still up, of when Obama presented Biden with, I think it's the Medal of Honor he provided him with. It was like within the last couple of months of their presidency that he provides that to Joe Biden, and it warms my heart so much. But anyways, that's a giant tangent. So yeah, do I recommend this book? Yeah, it's like well written, obviously, and like if you like Joe Biden's personality, you're going to like this book. And I not enjoy the way that he talks about grief, but I think that the way that he talks about grief is very honest and very helpful. So if you are someone who is possibly grieving over something or someone, then it might be helpful to you as well. It's also really short, so there's that too. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I can't say that necessarily everyone's going to enjoy it, but I enjoyed it. All right, so those are all of the books that I have for you guys in this video. Definitely leave a comment down below letting me know if you have read any of these books and what your thoughts are on any of them, or you talk to me about what your favorite read was this month, because I always enjoy reading those comments as well. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.